Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the Speaking Sessions podcast. I'm Philip Sessions, your public speaking coach, and I am excited to bring on Ruben Alvarez. Ruben is an American entrepreneur, founder and CEO of the Marketing Hunters and TEDx speaker. That's right, he is a TEDx speaker. He is the international author to the book Brand Sharks, which has been featured in many news outlets, including Forbes. This man is a man on fire right now. He's got so many things going on all over social media. All his videos are pretty much hits all the time. He really knows his stuff. So I'm really excited to talk to Ruben today about how we prepare speeches and how we get even on those TEDx stages and using social media to help us get there. But Ruben, man, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, man. No, thank you. It's funny how fast life moves, right?
Hmm.
Because everything that we kind of talked about happened this year, and we're coming to an end of the year, right? So it's really goes to show what you can do in 12 months. And yeah, no, I mean, what I primarily do is the marketing, right? We do marketing through more of a psychological standpoint instead of you post and you create, and that's pretty much it. We really look at the factors of what creates attention, what creates engagement, what makes somebody stay a little bit longer and watch the video, what makes them not skip it, swipe left, right, up or down. We don't want any of that, right?
Yeah.
That's what we do. And I've used a lot of the concepts of growing my business into speaking, and how we got the TEDx, because it really was through networking. I think that there's two ways of doing things in business and in life. You can either hammer away at it the traditional way, which, if you're trying to get on stages, you can send a bunch of emails and pitch people, or you can network and then they ask you to be on stages. So
Mm.
that's a little bit more about me.
Yeah, you're exactly right with the whole networking thing. I mean, yeah, there are the two ways, like you said, you can hammer it out, you can try and do everything yourself, or really I see the new generation almost it seems like, or maybe it's coming back around. I don't know. I wasn't in entrepreneurship before the times of social media and the internet. So maybe beforehand it was this way as well, but you're seeing this a revolution, if you will, a resurgence maybe of people really networking and they're getting together with people, almost creating a syndication and they're helping each other grow. And rather than I'm going to try and do this all myself, I'm going to put my ego in front of everything. They're actually dropping the ego and allowing other people to help them out. And you see people blow up a lot quicker because of that network, because they're utilizing other experts instead of trying to do it all themselves. Build a website, put out the LLC, do the SOPs, do the marketing, do the sales, do the manufacturing, all of that. They're allowing other people to come in and help them out, or at least give them that helping hand to show them the way.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things, and you said it correctly, because I really do believe it's ego. It was ego for me before I could really ask for help. And I think it's one of those things that you really have to, one, you have to vet the person that you want
Mm,
to be in your inner circle, whether it's a mentor or somebody that you want to grow with. But at the same time, you have to let your guard down and say, hey, I don't know everything, and I might not be as polished as I seem, and I actually do need help. I
yeah.
think that's the most difficult part, because I believe that to be a public speaker, you have to appear to be an expert in your field. And the moment that you tell somebody I need help, they're like, why aren't you the expert? Right. And so it
Mm,
becomes this internal battle for ourselves to be able to find the right person that we trust enough to be able to tell that to, and so that way it still maintains our credibility. And so I've been finding out that, even though, and this might be helpful for somebody who's listening, even though you do ask for help, if you are credible enough in your space and you've put in enough hours, people really don't care that you might not be credible in another space, because really they only see the credibility in the space that you have.
mm.
And so for me, it was marketing. I heard this two or 3 weeks ago from a person who has a doctorate, right? Like, her name's Dr. Patricia, and she told me, like, you're an expert. And I was like, no, no, I don't think I'm an expert. I'm gonna stop you there. And she goes, no, from the outside in, I'm telling you right now, like, you're an expert. And I still didn't accept it at that point, but it made me think of it this way: at what point will I consider myself an expert?
Mm.
And so maybe I thought, maybe I am an expert, but in my own eyes, I'm not. And so I think we have to start letting our egos down a little bit to say you can't be an expert in everything and you will need help, but
Hmm.
you might actually be an expert still in the thing that you have. So don't doubt that.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes we almost have that shift where we go too far the other way, where it's like all this stuff, and I've heard this from, I think Lane Horton talked about it. It's like when he had his bachelor's in, I think, biology or something, he was like, "Dude, I know everything," but then he went on to get his master's and PhD and everything, and then he realized, dude, I know nothing. And I think it's that same kind of concept for you with marketing and everything, and for others as well, is that as you start to know more and become more of that quote unquote expert in your field, you feel like you don't know a single
Mhm.
thing. But yes, from the outside looking in, you are so knowledgeable on that. And that's the funny thing as well. Most of us think, especially as we become an expert in our field, we have to teach these high level things, these things that took us 10 years or 10 years plus to learn. Whenever everybody just needs that milk, essentially, they need that 101 stuff, the super simple stuff to help them get over the hurdles that they have because they're
Yeah.
not going down that field. Now, if you're talking, Ruben, you're trying to teach other marketing people, it's a little different. You're going to be above the 101, but because you've been in it so long, you probably could teach closer to your level and they're still going to get a ton from that, even though there may be some things where you feel like, I really don't know this that well. And that's the beauty of public speaking, the beauty and the curse, if you will,
Mhm.
because all you really need to be is one or two steps ahead of the people that you're speaking to. It's not, if you can be the expert, that's great. And I think you should know a lot about it, but if you're speaking on something or a question is brought up, let's just say it's kind of out of left field. If you know a little bit about it, it's okay to answer. But when you're going into public speaking, definitely go based on your expertise. And as long as you're one
Mhm.
or two steps ahead of other people, you're going to be able to bring a value, which is the most important thing.
Yeah, no, for sure. It is one of those things where it's so funny how it happens that when you go into public speaking, you have a skill that you built for so long, but for some reason, it seems like there are people that want other stuff from you. So,
Hmm.
like for me, it was marketing, and then some people that couldn't relate to marketing wanted more feel good stuff. And so I was like, do I want to be feel good? Is it entrepreneurship that they want to learn? Is it that they want to learn how to, break through the I can't do it mentality? But where the credibility was the marketing, right? So that's what you
Yeah.
have to pursue. And then eventually you kind of branch out.
Hmm. Break that down a little bit more for us. I think that's really a valid point that we need to talk about because a lot of people they want to get into public speaking, and a lot of people that I talk to, it's just, oh, I'll talk about anything. I talk about whatever, and of course, that's not a great way to go about it. And so you kind of mentioned it here, but can you break that down a little bit more, especially from the marketing perspective and psychology perspective, about why it's important to focus on that one avenue and then maybe start spreading out as you get into it more?
Well, yeah, because we are experts. Whenever you're an expert in anything, I think that there's a lot that goes into how you became an expert in that, right? So you could say, hey, well, you became an expert in marketing. Well, okay, well, I went on social media a lot, so I could talk about social media. And I had to learn sales to get more clients. So there's that. And then I had to learn businesses and I learned systems. And, I had to really learn psychology. And so when you start looking at everything that really went into it, it's like, well, I could talk about sales, right? I could talk about sales very easily. And I had to stay motivated, so I could talk about motivation, and you start going down all these avenues. And so when you start testing some of them, the people that don't care about marketing in your audience might go, well, no, I really like that, and I really like that you're trying to motivate me, blah blah blah. But that doesn't really help you get on stages, and it doesn't give you the ability to get paid because then you're starting from nothing again. And
Mm,
so the easiest barrier to entry when it comes to a lot of these speaking engagements is you talk about the thing that you know. I do believe as well, though, that you really have to look at the stage that you're speaking on because sometimes they're not going to be directly correlated with what you're doing. For example, the TEDx, I didn't believe that it was correct because the main concept was humano, which we're all human, right? So I didn't want to
mhm,
go on stage and be like, "Hey, marketing is for everybody. Let me tell you why it's great." Right? And so it didn't seem like it really fit into that. So I had to structure it a little bit different, and the whole concept of that one was build hard skills to actually have real confidence, right? That was the main point of that one. But everything else that I talk about is in regards to marketing. And when I talk to other people who have been on stage and that I asked them for advice, they said, you know, the skill that you have of marketing, it's not that it's hard, but people don't understand it on the level that you understand it. We understand base concepts of I need to advertise, I need brand awareness, I need to post on social media daily, but they don't understand that they need to post daily because there's one person that comes on Monday and there's another person that comes on Thursday, and they might miss that. They don't understand how long a piece of content lasts, right? They don't
Yeah.
understand why somebody skips and why someone doesn't. They don't understand how to make a script. They don't understand what a 3 second hook is. And so, like, when you really break down all these other core concepts, it's like, well, I really understand those, and I thought they were simple, but people don't. So it's like, what things do you think that are really simple, but they're really complex to others in what you're doing? And so it goes back to that you have to pursue the thing that you're already good at. You put so much time into it. That's what people really want to hear about. It's not that people don't want to hear about the other stuff. They're just not going to pay you for it. That's the free
Yeah.
stuff. You know what I mean? The stuff that you're actually going to pay for is the stuff that you've learned over the last 10 years, like you said.
Hmm. Exactly. And then it kind of goes back to our original conversation that people are going to pay you when they realize, you know what, I don't want to invest the time to learn this, because we can pretty much learn anything. Now, I will say there are limits. Let's say a rocket scientist, it's going to be difficult for some of us. We may never be able to do that, but there's definitely concepts and things that we can learn our own. Doing a website, building our own website, we can do that, or we can pay somebody. And so that's
Mhm.
usually what will happen for you or for other coaches as well. It's like, hey, I'm going to pay you to be able to get the shortcut, to be able to absorb your knowledge and be able to apply it for my business. And that's why so many people are becoming coaches, because we're realizing we need that more and more with the invention of technology, which was supposed to give us more time. It seems like we have less and less time every single year,
Yeah.
which is really crazy.
Well, it's funny because I had a little mini keynote that I had to do as an exercise, and in the keynote, it basically said that there's not a shortage of people wanting to pay coaches a high dollar amount. It's
Mm,
the shortage lies in not being able to find that coach.
mm,
And so the hard part is how much research has to go into finding someone. And so that's why we actually do promote social media a lot, is because if you are able to be seen 7 times, they call you and they close themselves. So again, it's not the hard part is not it's not wanting to hire the people, it's finding the people that you want to hire. That's the
mm,
hardest part.
mm. So I'm going to ask this a little selfishly. What can we do then to be that person they look at on social media? What are some just quick tips for us?
Uh High quality content. You have to actually seem like you care about what you're doing, right?
Hmm.
You have to be consistent. That's kind of, to me, consistency is really a given. I know a lot of people preach it as like, the golden thing, but it's really not, because if me and you start being consistent, it's whoever does it better that really wins, not the consistent person that wins.
Hmm.
So you have to be consistent for sure. You have to have really high quality content. You have to give away a lot of the secrets that you really don't want to give away. You have to be likable. You have to engage. A lot of people don't engage, which is a really, really stupid thing, because if you really think about it, we went over this yesterday, everything that you do is to try to get a person, right? So
Mm.
the moment that somebody engages with any of your stuff, you don't engage back. I was the end goal to all of the marketing you were doing. I was the end goal.
Yeah.
And then you don't engage. So how fucking stupid is that? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to, but
You're
it's
good.
idiocracy at its finest, because you do all this work to get me to engage, you don't engage back. Why are you even doing anything?
Yeah. Yeah. That blows my mind when people don't do that. There's one speaking coach that I've seen, and it came up as an ad, and I was like, oh, this is interesting. I started looking, but all of his posts, it's like people are engaging and he's saying nothing back. I'm like, how? Why? This makes absolutely no sense. And maybe he's so busy, he just doesn't have time now. He's got so many clients, perhaps. I don't know. But it just baffles me that, yeah, you put this content out there because you want people to engage. And then when they do, you don't engage back.
You
Man,
don't do
how
anything.
how dumb. Why put the content out there then?
Exactly, because
Yeah.
if even if you are that busy, why put it out to have it later? You know what I mean? Those people are gonna drop off.
Yeah.
Hire someone else. Like that's the
Yeah.
whole business. So yeah, it really is one of those things where if you want to get hired, just do the steps necessary to get people to engage and then close them.
Yeah, and I like the point you brought about consistency. Consistency is obviously a huge thing. If you lack it, that means you're already out of the thing. Like, as I look at Netflix as an example I use, if I see something that it says like 2000 10 or something like that, and it's got 3 seasons, I don't even watch it. Or like one season, I'm like, I'm gonna get into it, I'm gonna get hooked, and then that's it. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. So I'm just gonna move on. And it's almost the same, it's really the same thing when it comes to our personal marketing. If we're posting here and we're posting there, eventually people are like, you know what? I can't rely on this. So I'm gonna move on. But you're right. So consistency really is kind of the bar. That's the standard.
Hmm.
Like you have to have it no matter what. So then I like how you said whoever's better of that consistent person. That's just the bar. You have to be consistent or it's never gonna work out. And you're exactly right.
Yeah, I
So
don't think people understand that.
no, no, they definitely don't, and it took me a while to understand that myself, and I'm sure it took you a while as well, and everything. It's a tough thing to do, but it's what you have to do if you want people to end up working with you or
Yeah,
see you as a public speaker. Well,
no, for
let's
sure.
go back real quick. I know you mentioned with your TEDx speech, how you had to change it up a little bit compared
Yeah.
to your normal marketing speeches. So tell us a little bit about that. How did you go and prep for that speech, especially since you had to change it up?
So this was one of the hardest talks that I've had because I had the notification that I was going to be the speaker 7 days before the TEDx event.
Oh wow.
And yeah, so it goes to the power of networking. One, we did a training with the city of Socorro. They become really, really great friends of ours. And they asked if we wanted to do the social media no charge. And we're like, yeah, for sure. If we can put you guys on the website and say we work with City of Socorro, absolutely. So they were okay, we'll call you, and they gave us some information. And I sent back an email and I told them, hey, thanks for everything. I was just wondering what's the bar for TEDx speakers. If you guys need one next year, I'd like to know. And they go, funny enough, I'll call you. So they call me and they're like, we had somebody back out. Do you want to be the last one? And I was like, no, I don't. I really don't. I had just told John, my sales manager, I was like, hey, I'm going to reach out to them. I really don't think I have time to do this. And it's going to be really stressful. So I'm going to ask them for the next one. And so I do things out of respect to him. I was like, I know that we should probably do this one, but I think it'll screw us over. Are you okay with that? And he goes, yeah, I'm totally cool with that. All right, cool. So they call me on the phone and they're like, do you want to do this? And I was like, fuck yes, I want to do this. I was like, hell yeah, I want to do this. So I told
Yeah.
John, I was like, hey man, I'm sorry everything I just told you, but I said yes. And he goes, no, man, that's even better. That's cool. I totally understand. So there, all right. So we're
Yeah.
both on the same page, but it was really nerve wracking. I mean, I had 7 days to figure out what I was going to talk about. I asked them, what's this about? They kind of gave me the synopsis. I was like, dude, I don't know what the hell I'm going to talk about. I made a list. I made 3 things. That's the best one that I came up with. And the title was Motivation Doesn't Last, Skills Build Confidence. That was the name of the talk.
Hmm.
And so I was really into that mindset of, motivate goes away. What I really need is to make these sales calls. I keep trying to throw motivation at me, never comes, never make the sales call, pick up 10 sales books, end up making the sale call. I'm good. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's like, it's really, you wasted all that time instead of just learning the skill. And so I had to really think about how I was going to create this talk. And what I came up with originally was, let me start writing it. And nothing really came from that. And then I
Yeah.
wrote and then I deleted and wrote and deleted. And so then I picked up a book and the book had to do with public speaking. And I can't remember who it was. I think it was Brian Tracy. But it was one of the greats, one of those people that has been speaking for a long time, and they had just such phenomenal. Richard, actually, it wasn't anyone famous. 7 Principles of Public Speaking. Richard Zeoli, I think is how you pronounce his name.
Hmm.
But I was reading that, and it gave me some really, really good insights. I had to think of it. I believe we all know this, right? That it's not what you want to say; it's what the audience needs to hear. If you say what the audience needs to hear, then it actually makes sense that you were there,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So I went through the book, then I hit that, and I was like, oh, okay, now this makes sense, right? It also talked about like 3 points. It's easy for us to remember in threes. I remember a while back I saw John Malott. John Malott actually gave that concept. He said we were humans. We remember in threes, 3 little pigs. We remember Nike, just do it, and so we were
Hmm.
conditioned to remember things in threes. And so it became really easy because then I knew it was a 13-minute talk and I had an intro, 3 points, and an exit, right? And so if I did like 1 minute or 2 minutes, 2 minutes, that's 4 minutes. Now I have 9 minutes left. I do 3 minutes for each one. Boom, 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 boom. Done. Easy stories. And it just became really easy to kind of structure it because I almost had to have a timeline of events, and the reason that I did it that way is because it was really easy to follow and bring back full circle. And I think I did really well. The only thing that was a little difficult with the TEDx is that you don't know what the person before you is really going to talk about. So I
Mm,
felt that everybody was talking about the city, and I go in there to say nothing about the city and give a kind of more real TED talk, right?
yeah.
And so that's the only thing that I think was a little bit different, but I think that since I was the last one, I was able to close it out per se in a little bit
Yeah.
more of a serious tone, and I think that it went well.
Yeah, man, that's awesome and a great way to go about that. And I guess for most people that don't know about TEDx talks, you only get like 18 minutes. So
Mhm.
that's where Ruben's talked about the times in there and why he's very specific about that. Not that most speeches you're maybe you would break it down like that. I don't necessarily by time. I just kind of go based off of feel, but usually you know how much time you have. And in TEDx case, you only have like 18 minutes, which is so fast and
Yeah.
which really goes back to the 3 points. And you said each of those points had about 3 minutes right there. And then, of course, you had the intro, conclusion, all that good stuff and everything. So I really like that structure that you did there. And that's a great way to break it down. And like how you said, circle back. That's what most people don't do. They don't, well, one, they don't have like this whole journey to go through it. It's just like, okay, I'm going to introduce myself and then talk about how great I am or whatever. And then they're like point, point, point. But it's like you're jumping to points. There's no
Mhm.
transition between that. And then it's like, all right, thank you for your time. And I'm like, oh, okay. Like no wrap up, no let me
Yeah.
know what I should know at the end. And
Yeah.
it's cool that you did get all that in there.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that I've noticed about public speaking that is the most annoying, and I'll say this because I don't want to be labeled as, an apostate of the church or whatever, but I was part of a religious group that if I talk bad about them, then they will consider that just because of that, right?
Mm,
And so I'm not going to talk bad about the organization, but what I will say is that there was a lot of public speakers, right? Like that would go up and we'd go to
mm,
these big, what are they called? Where they have the games and stuff, amphitheaters and stadiums, right? And we would watch these public speakers. And I noticed that the same issue that I had with them is the same issue that I have with regular public speakers, which is the people that say I and we too much, I can never relate with. The people that say you and us, I feel that it's a lot easier. And so a
mm,
lot of the times you're right, they go up there, oh, I'm so great. And they try to explain how you can do anything through their story, but they never bring it back to you. And
mm.
so it's one of those things that we have to be so self-conscious of, because you go up there and the first thing you want to say is we as humans are conditioned to blah, and your whole talk will be us and we, and that's it. You know what I mean? And so you
Mhm,
never really bring it back to like us, like you and me connect, and I never
mhm.
bring it back to like you have a problem and you can learn from this, right? And it's all about you. It's not about me. I want you to be good, you know? So yeah, sorry, you talked about like the the annoyances, and that's always been a really
Yeah,
big one.
no, that's great. That's a great point. And I know we've talked about that. Man, that was a long time ago. I remember you giving like a marketing tip, like when you're doing your videos,
Yeah.
start going and use like when you talk to the person you're trying to speak to instead of saying about I and I. It's you, and that way it's like, oh wow, okay, Philip's actually talking to me when he says
Yeah.
you
Yeah, well,
versus
even
when
in
he
our
says
stories,
I.
right? When we pull out the phone, we say, "What's up, everybody?" and one person's watching it. So
Yeah.
it's like there's not like 10 people watching your story right now. They don't all gather around. Oh, Phil just put out a story.
Yeah. Oh man, yeah, we're all watching with you, buddy. Like, yeah, for sure. So, can you explain that a little bit, especially from a marketing perspective? I would love for people to understand that more because there I go with we, but we all do this a lot of times where we're guilty and where we say I, we say we don't talk about you, we don't talk about us, trying to bring, talk to that person directly, and we're not trying to bring them in with us. It's always about this arbitrary we, like
Yes.
myself and other people,
Yes,
and
the
not those in the
world
audience.
entirely, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so but I will say this because John thinks different than I do, right?
Mhm.
I'm very much so like aggressive. I don't care what people think. Like I'm gonna say what I'm gonna say. John's like, hey, you should reel it back a little bit, right? And so he took a look at Hermosi stuff, which I know everybody's listening is gonna be like, Hermosi, yeah,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
But we really dissected it, and he goes, I noticed that Hermosi stuff is really good because he starts it off with, there's a problem in the world right now, or he'll say something to the extent of a lot of humans, blah blah blah. And so we really started dissecting, and I'm like, why is he doing that? And so I guess what happens is that whenever you start something with the you, it becomes very personal. And so
Mm,
I guess there's this weird shift happening right now where it's like, who are you to tell me what to do? And so if you have
mm,
no credibility or you're someone new, they're like, yeah, screw you. This guy thinks he knows everything. Why don't tell me what to do, right? And so when you
mm,
put that everyone or us or the world or like a big problem that is being faced with right now, it makes it easier for people to listen because then they go, yeah, that is a problem that we have right now. This is very
mm,
true, right? And so they don't skip you. But what it doesn't allow is for followers, because the more opinionated you are and the more that you actually talk to someone, even though you'll get people to skip, that person that you're talking to will actually feel like you're talking to them. They'll actually appreciate it and then they'll actually follow you and they'll start engaging. And so that's the two sides of it. If you're trying to more calmly have people listen to you more, then there's this side. Doesn't mean that they're going to convert to anything. If you want to be more aggressive and start saying the use and stuff, they will listen to you, but you're going to lose other people. And so I actually noticed that during my talk is that I would look at people and it was opposite ends of the spectrum. I had one lady that was literally like,
yeah, like on the edge of her
like
seat
just
looking
just
in. Yeah.
inching closer and closer. Everything I said, just oh my, it literally felt like she was gonna jump out. She was like, her face was radiating because I was speaking her language. And then there was other people that were like, "Mm."
Yeah,
It just seemed like
disgusting.
everything that I was saying was wrong, right? Like, no, motivation's everything. Oh, you can't get in life without motivation, right? And so, but it's because you're opinionated, right? And I think that that's what you have to be on stage, is you really have to pick a side.
Mhm.
Is marketing right? Is advertising right? Should people be doing advertising? The moment that you say something like, hey, you're gonna spend all your money on ads when you start off your business, you probably shouldn't run ads. There's gonna be a marketer that's like, oh no, that's not true, I run ads, right? And it's like, yeah, but you probably didn't get any result.
Yeah.
So you have to be a little opinionated when you say stuff, and it's okay to lose half the audience if you gain the other half.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And just to give a good example that we think about like politics, you got your liberal side, you got your conservative side. You can't be both liberal and conservative. So the same thing with your speech. You can't be for both sides because everybody's be like, what the crap is this person talking about? Like they're gonna be so confused and they're just gonna say, you know what, this person isn't for me. Because clearly they can't decide which side they're on. So therefore they're not with me. So they must be against me or whatever. They just discredit you. So whatever side you decide to be on, and we can take politics out of this, you need to go into that point. And I want to go back real quick because that whole when you talk about I and we, the we does sound like we're together. And when I say, oh yeah, no, we are here to work together or whatever, you mentioned like you and John, but you said we right after that, which to me it was like, oh, that kind of clicked for me as well. Like I knew what you were saying, but it really clicked because you were just like we, but I was excluded from that because the we was you and John.
Yeah. Well,
So,
even think
so a
about it.
lot
I
of
say
times,
I say
go ahead.
we for me and John. If John is here
Yeah,
with me, that it
yeah,
doesn't turn into we anymore. That's
yeah,
us,
yeah.
right? And so that's what I mean on stage. You
Hmm.
don't go, "Oh, we feel good." No, you'd be like, "No, hey, this is us, man. This is us. We're
Yeah.
here. Us, right?"
Mm,
So it's a weird thing how the we is almost like you're not here. But
yeah.
the us is in person. So it's like if you want to connect, you have to have that us like connection. We're
Hmm.
here right now. It's us.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like a little nuance, if you will, but for sure it's a good thing to pick up on and realize it should be about us and not about we, especially when you're there in person, because it does become exclusive to those that are there. Because then it's like, okay, well, I'm not here subconsciously, and that's the big thing that we don't realize as speakers. Those things that we say that hit the subconscious are so important,
Yeah.
even if they are little things such as saying we versus us or I versus you. That one's a little bit more apparent, but
Yeah.
still that we versus us, it's definitely something to think about for sure.
Yeah. The,
But
the words that we use are super important. And it's hard to really understand that just because we want to say something, there isn't a different word that could have a different impact for someone. And so we realize that, like with videos, right? If I say something like, here's the fastest way to lose all your money, you're going to listen to that, right? But if I
yeah,
say, hey, here's a chance of you losing $100 a month, you're like, a chance? That doesn't sound that great. Losing all your money is like, oh, I should probably see what the hell he's at least talking about, right?
yeah,
So the words that we use really matter, and I think that the once you start understanding that there is different ways of saying the same thing that gets people's attention, then you're able to use that so that that way you don't lose the audience when they start getting bored or tired.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny you mentioned that example because this happened to me the other day where we were going back and forth in an email, and this lady was telling me, "Is like, hey, most likely next year we won't be able to support you." And I'm like, okay, well, I've got to go back to management about this. If I tell the management that, hey, they most likely won't be able to support us, they'll probably see, oh, most likely won't. So that means there is a chance because they were asking for head count and all this stuff. Yeah, we most likely won't be able to support you without the head count if we had to give them that head count. And so I had to ask, so does that mean that you would be able to support us without head count? Like
Yeah.
just to be very explicit and just to have it's either a yes or a no, because that was really just kind of like same thing that you just brought up. It's like, oh, here's what there's a chance you would lose
Hmm.
the money instead of you will lose money if you do this. You have to kind of have that absolute so people get bought in to what it is or they get totally repelled by it for sure. And
Exactly.
it's not always good to talk in absolutes, but when you're trying to attract that attention, definitely use those absolutes to help attract that attention to get people in that you actually want to have in.
Yeah.
Which that's actually kind of last thing I want to talk about here real quick. So you kind of mentioned this with the TEDx speech, it was a different audience. You kind of mentioned that with social media and everything, trying to focus on your audience. So how do you craft your speeches to focus on the particular audience that you want to speak to? And then on the back end, I'm sure you're also trying to make sure that they understand who you are so they would end up coming back to work for you or work with you and want to use your services. So how do you go about crafting that speech so people will get that know, like, and trust from you and actually get that good information?
Yeah. So I think the easiest thing is knowing the audience first, because if you're able to know the audience and you can keep them engaged for the longest amount of time, but it really goes to why are you there more than anything. And so, for example, there was a conference that just passed up, and it was like the Healing Warriors or something like that, right? If you know
Mhm.
Curtis McCoy, he was a speaker there, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, well, it would be good to go. And then I was like, okay, well, why am I going? And I was like, I don't think that I'm really a healing warrior. And then, am I somebody who's healed through life? And I was like, I am, but is that kind of what I want to be known for? And not really. So it was one of those things where it's like I want to go and support and I want to go speak, but it doesn't really seem like it's right for me. Could I
Yeah.
speak on something? Sure, I could speak like probably on suicide, right? Because I've had somebody that was very close that killed themselves in my life. But what does it really do for your public speaking career other than content? And I think
Mhm.
that when you're more intentional about it and you don't confuse the audience, and it becomes very easy for you to be able to do what you want to do. And so when you craft your speech, one, know why you're actually going to the place, who's going to be there. We did another recent one that was called Latin Talk, so that was more towards the Latino community, right? And I didn't talk specifically about Latinos. There was still like specific points that I were like the key takeaway points, but I didn't bring up some statistics, right? Like I think it was in the 90s, I believe it was 30 or 40% of all Latinos were um, gang members, right? So we were supposed to
Mm.
be based on those statistics, gang members, or we were supposed to be violent. We were supposed to be a lot of things. We were supposed to go to school. And so I just started saying, like, I didn't want to be the statistic. I wanted to be the exception. Applies to everything, right?
Mhm.
So when you're crafting your speech, I think that you really have to look at those core things that you're trying to do. You have to really understand the whole purpose of the conference or the seminar or whatever it is that you're doing. If people that are going are the everyday person, maybe don't talk about how they can start their own business because they might not want to start their own business. They might want to know how to just get a raise, right?
Yeah.
And
Mm.
so I start structuring it that way. I don't know if there's a different way to well, I kind of do because somebody told me, but I don't know if there's a different way to structure other than like key points. That's the main way that I do it. 30 minutes or less, three key points, right? If it goes
Mhm.
60 minutes to 90 minutes, then I would probably do 9 to 12 points or something like that. Or I would mix in some sort of a hands-on workshop type of thing so that that way it doesn't get boring and repetitive. I look for the points in my life that could be good stories. I didn't really
Mhm.
think about it this way, but I guess you can add stories of other people, right? That's the hardest part, I
Yeah.
think, is like that
Yeah.
we don't think of a specific way, but adding story like about what's his name? There's a boxer I really like, Muhammad Ali, right? That you could add
Mhm.
how he would do like his reps. You could talk about Kobe. You could talk about, Canelo, which is in the boxer now. You could talk about Peyton Manning. There's a lot of different stories of different people that you could throw in there. Albert Einstein doesn't always have to be about you. And I think that when you're able to maneuver it that way, then it becomes really easy to have the talk.
Yeah, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and that's what I like to do a lot too. Like have those 3, maybe 5 points, and then really bring in stories. And so as it gets longer, try and bring in examples, bring in stories. So maybe you tell your point, then you give an example about your point, and then you tell a story around that, or however you want to kind of manipulate that. And really, unless if it's a drastically different audience, I usually just bring in different stories to relate to that audience.
Mhm.
Or if the yeah, like you said, if maybe instead of it's not an entrepreneur group, it's a group that's worried about getting pay raises because they're employees. Okay, you're
Yeah,
not going to talk about business. So
exactly.
yeah, you might change that point out. But I really did like that point as well that you brought up, like really that event, the people that you're going to speak to, are those people that you want to talk to in the end? Is that the kind of thing you want to be around and have your brand recognized around, have your personal self recognized around? That's something to think about as well, because a lot of us, we get, it's just like a business. Well, oh man, I'm going to work with anybody that's going to give me money to do what I do for work. I'm just going to take it. And after a while, you start realizing it really sucks to work with people you don't want to work with. And those usually are the people that are paying the butt for you too, because they were just somebody that paid you. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with speaking.
Yeah, and I think you have to have like you said, there has to be a way for you to monetize after.
Yeah.
And so if you go to an event and you have no way to monetize after, you're like, yeah, I got paid a little bit of money, but then I broke even. And
Yeah.
then the content that I'm using in my audience that I have right now, they're expecting marketing, and now I'm talking about like healing and stuff. It's gonna so nothing else came out of it other than being able to go and really practice being on stage.
Yeah. 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 So, man, that was a great point as well. Yeah, I appreciate everything that you've shared with us. But I do have one question I want to ask. This is a little, it's usually a question I'll ask at the end. But if there's one message that you could share for the rest of your life, what would that message be?
Try harder. Yeah, I truly believe that I'm a really big believer that really we could do anything if we really wanted to, right? If we
Mhm.
really wanted to do something better than someone else, if we really tried at it, then it could be done. And we have people like and I don't know his name, and I'm sorry that I don't, but the dude with no limbs, right? That's like swimming in the ocean and does public talks and stuff. Uh, there really is no limitations to the stuff that we can do, maybe even to the best of our ability. Like he might never be an Olympic swimmer, but if you look at how fast he swims and you're like, hey, no limbs, he does this. If he had limbs, he'd probably be this. Oh, well, it's probably better, right?
Yeah.
So there is no cap on what we can do. So I really think that the message is try harder.
I like that, man. And you're exactly right. Sometimes you just got to dig in and try harder no matter what. Keep being consistent, keep putting in that action, get other people to come in and help you out. It's not try harder, like literally you physically trying harder or putting in more hours, but maybe you need to try harder to network more. There's all sorts of ways. I like that message a lot. But Ruben, man, I appreciate you coming on, sharing a ton of value, sharing a lot of your experience and your journey so far within public speaking. I know you're going to go a lot further. And if people want to get in touch with you, want to follow you, see what you got going on, where's the best place for them to follow you at?
Yeah, best place is social media. Instagram, I respond to my DMs faster than my texts. So I am Ruben Alvarez. No weird spelling, RUBEN, right? I am Ruben
Mm,
Alvarez. I will say this, man. What you've done with your personal brand and everything, and how dedicated you are to public speaking. I mean, even just having this conversation, I feel like a lot of podcasts are the same, but this one was very much so on public speaking, how people get better. I think that if anybody's on the fence of giving you a try, I think that they definitely should.
man, well, Ruben, I appreciate you saying that. It's yeah, that's it's hard for me to take some of that stuff in like that, but I do appreciate that. But yeah, this is where I get a little awkward when people say nice things to me. I'm like, oh, I
Thank
don't know
you.
how to act
You
about it.
just
But
hey
yeah,
man,
thank you,
I've
man.
learned
Just
just thank you, and then
yeah.
you pretend like you get you get those all the time. Just thank you.
Yeah, well, Ruben, thank you. But yeah, seriously, man, thank you for coming on the show. For all of you that have listened, make sure you go follow Ruben. Make sure that you also subscribe to, whether you're watching on YouTube or if you're listening to the podcast, make sure you subscribe where you're at, wherever you're at, and also leave us a review so we can continue to grow, continue to help you and help all your friends out there be able to grow in their public speaking journey. And make sure you go out there and fire up the mic.